Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the London Borough of Newham's Crime and Antisocial Behaviour Scrutiny Commission. Can everybody present hear me? Please raise your hand just to let me know that you can hear me. Thank you very much. This evening's meeting will be held virtually via Zoom. The Council has decided that whilst we are in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic, public meetings will be held virtually for the meantime to keep councillors, officers and members of the public as safe as possible. Members of the public will be able to view this meeting via Newham's YouTube page. For this meeting, we will be aided by Roger Raymond and Richard Plummer to assist councillors and officers with the technology. May I ask members to note that they must raise their hand in order to indicate that they wish to speak. I also want to remind members that if a vote is taken at any time, it will be by way of raising your hand like so, in order that we may capture this on the screen. This meeting of the London Borough of Newham's Crime and Antisocial Behaviour Scrutiny Commission is now called to order. Agenda item number 1, introductions and welcomes. I would like to welcome everyone to the meeting. Thank you for attending. Agenda item number 2, apologies for absence. Does any member or officers have any apologies?
Hello, Chair. Apologies for Councillor Gray. Thank you very much.
Councillor Gray, thank you. Does anybody else have any apologies that they would like to make known now? No. Okay. Have you noted that, Roger? Just Councillor Gray and that's it, yeah? Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much. Agenda item number 3, declarations of interest. Are there any members wishing to make any declarations of interest at this time? No? Fantastic. Agenda item number 4, the minutes of the previous meeting. The minutes of the previous meeting will be agreed at the next meeting. Unfortunately, they're not ready yet, so we can't agree anything because we don't have them here to agree. So I'll move swiftly on. Agenda item number 5, which is our substantive item, CCTV in the borough. I'm delighted to welcome to this meeting Councillor James Beckles, who's the Cabinet Member for Crime and Community Safety, Gary Connors, the Assistant Director of Community Safety, and Chief Inspector Chris Nixon. Councillor Beckles, would you like to make some opening remarks?
I will, thank you, Chair. As introduced, I am Councillor James Beckles, Cabinet Member for Crime and Community Safety. This paper sets out our current CCTV resources. I hope scrutiny members find the information useful in your deliberations about CCTV tonight. I think this paper will provide you with good background about our CCTV capacity, but I believe this paper should be looked at in the wider arena of what we provide as a service within community safety and how we respond to the concerns of residents. I think we can use our CCTV in positive ways to make our residents feel safer. And on that, I will take scrutiny's questions and endeavour to answer them clearly.
Thank you very much, Councillor Beckles. Before we move to questions, I just want to give the other witnesses a chance just to make some opening remarks. Gary Connors.
Thank you, Chair. As Councillor Beckles has said, we've essentially the paper sets out to basically show the expansion we've had to date from our analog camera system to an IP or digital system. So we've updated our digital system. So the paper just sets out that camera network so far. It sets out the functions of our control room, which is also named Delta 1, and also just talks at the end of the paper about some of our expansion plans going forward. And I suppose I would just point out that the cameras that we're talking about here are both our public surveillance cameras, which are the main cameras you see on the streets and around the neighbourhoods, our parking enforcement cameras, which parking enforcement colleagues deal with, and they're expanding those as we speak from 160 to 200. And also we've got a number of cameras across our council building system in our depots, etc. But again, they're not so much in streets. So whilst we mentioned those, we'd focus more on the public space surveillance cameras. And the last thing I would just say, Chair, is that we also have a number of 4G mobile cameras, which I haven't highlighted in the number in here, but we do have a stock of 40 cameras that we can use mobily that have been used in the past around fly tipping, and I'm looking to utilise those more to also tackle ASB and crime hotspots as well.
Thank you very much, Gary, for that. Chris Nixon.
So with regards to the CCTV, particularly, the only thing I'd like to raise to the group's attention is that we have live links to it in the police station control room And in the last 12 months, it might have been slightly longer than 12 months ago, we added the facility for us to do downloads at the police station, saving a great deal of officers' time, which was greatly appreciated from Newham Council. Your control room are also on our radio network to aid us with deployments or dealing with ongoing incidents, and that's quite often a great help.
Thank you very much for that. Really do appreciate that. Does any committee member have a question at this time? Okay, Councillor Masters.
Thank you, Chair. One of the things I'm wondering about is obviously we have a lot of cameras, but do we have enough human resource to actually sort of monitor them and then sort of respond when we do see an incident?
Thank you, Chair. Shall I take the answer to that first?
Yeah, sorry, just quickly, I'll lay out the ground rules on this because we've got, you know, so few witnesses tonight, just yourself, Councillor Beckles and Chris. If there's a question asked, if you feel that you are the most relevant person, just jump in. There's no need. It's only when I've got like 16 witnesses that I've got to be, you know, the gatekeeper. But tonight, just go for it. Okay, thank you.
Chair, thank you. Thank you for your question, Councillor Masters. Yeah, I would certainly like to suggest we do. And whilst I haven't got into it in a lot of great detail in the paper, and apologies, I didn't set out the staffing regime, I do have, as well as an operations manager and a sort of a maintenance manager that looks after our maintenance contract. We've got an external contract maintenance provider, but in-house we have two managers and 2 supervisors, one for day, one for night, and of those we have 5 staff in the night shift and 4 staff in the day staff with their supervisor. And I suppose I would just say, from my experience, having been relatively new to the borough, that's a considerable amount of staff within a control room. The reason I guess I am excited going forward, and as much as I might have mentioned in the paper, we have also to date been managing the out of hours call service for the council. And that has just been changed just as I arrived in the borough. So we're doing that as we at the moment across to our tenancy services and our complaints department. And that will take away, I guess, a huge lot of work that comes in overnight. There is resource that goes with that, but essentially it was money that we were getting on recharge. So we get to maintain the staff, but we lose a high element of our, I suppose, our calls overnight to focus on both our CCTV viewing, our downloads with police colleagues, and also we maintain our what we call our Delta 1 emergency planning service. So when we have an emergency in the borough, I also run the emergency planning side, we take calls directly from LAS, the fire service and the police. So I would like to hope I could reassure you, Councillor Masters, we have a significant resource of officers in.
Thank you, Chris.
If I could add to what Gary said to kind of stretch those resources further, we have the live feeds in the police control room I mentioned before. And when an incident comes through or we've got something that requires CCTV attention, we can call up either on the radio or ring in the control room via Delta 1 and get them to focus their attention on where there is actually something going on. And that can be proactive, but more often it's reactive. So proactively, if you've had a serious violence incident in one area of the borough and you fear reprisals in another area, when I was covering duty officer, one of the things I would do is call up the CCTV control room and ask them to monitor the area that I was concerned about reprisals for. And that way you get well, it's not a small number of people, as you've heard from Gary, but the number of people that you've got focused, hopefully in the areas where we're anticipating problems.
Thank you very much. Councillor Masters, were you happy with that answer?
Can I have a supplementary, actually, because it brings me on to one of my other questions, which is related and leads on very nicely from the remarks just made by Chris and Gary.
Sure, go for it.
In terms of sort of protocols of sort of sharing material between the police and the council, I mean, it sounds like now the police can tap into our council feeds live, but if they need material that they haven't actually witnessed from us, are there protocols governing the handover of that footage, and what proportion of requests are granted?
Yes, Councillor, there is a whole process, and we're governed under the Information Commissioner's Office to make sure, and we do get audited around this as well. And I've had that in previous roles and previous authorities. Just to, I suppose, give you a bit of volume and COVID, I suppose COVID hasn't affected us, so I'll give you 2 years very quickly, and apologies I haven't put this in the paper for the Commission. But we, you know, outside of the live feed, and they can only get 3 lines through, so you get 3 cameras at any one time into Chris and our police operations hub, as it's now called, used to be IBO. And so whilst we will give them any 3 cameras they want at any time, and obviously they've got a bit more control over some of the downloads, we still have to give them that access to that information. But just to give you some numbers, we complete downloads, and that has to be done, signed through. We got police colleagues come in, we sign it through, and we have essentially, we've got sealed copies of footage that we will give to police. It has to be special timelines. And over from April 20 to March 21, we've had 587 downloads. 286 of those have gone to the police on the back of requests for crimes being committed. 301 of those have actually been downloaded by my own service, the wider community safety service, and that would be in relation to court cases around FPNs, potentially fly tipping, fly posting, a whole range of different issues we might have enforcement on. And if I take you back a year, bearing in mind that's a completely COVID year, I take you back a year, so I said we had 587 in 20 to 21. In the same year, same months, April 19 to March 20, the previous year, we had 1,177 downloads. 377 of those again to the police, 800 to our community safety service. And again, that's not probably overly surprising because we will take a lot of FPNs and court convictions around fly tipping, etc.
But is there a threshold that needs to be met
for
passing information on to the police? I mean, say like there's been a crime on the Greenway, just as you know, the kind of issue that comes to us quite often, and you know, the police want to get hold of CCTV footage. I mean, there you've got a crime that's being committed, but is there an actual threshold that has to be met to make material available?
I'm sorry, I completely misunderstood your first question. Apologies, Councillor. I get what you're asking now. And I'll pass to Chris in a moment as well. I might come with a police perspective. From our side, no. If we get requests from the police for footage, we would download the footage as asked for, and it will be signed over. I guess the point we have is we have a record of it. We keep a copy of it. We keep a copy of the officer who signed it over and the rationale and the reasons why they've signed it over. So we've got it. And I guess that protects us for our information in case, you know, sort of God forbid, police colleagues wanted to use it for something nefarious. So we will keep a record of that. But no, essentially, Councillor, there isn't. If police think that footage might be in some way, even minutely linked to solving a crime, we would look to supply the footage.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Does any other member have a question at this time? Okay, I've got 3 members. I'm going to go to Councillor Guana, then I'm going to go to Councillor Garfield, and then Councillor Tahora. Councillor Guana.
Okay. In the numeral 4, they say we have at the moment 631 cameras, and they specify where they are. But when they say 200, they will increase where they will be, or they will replace the old one, or some areas we need it, or I want this kind of the information, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. That breakdown is, I mentioned, and I probably went through it quite quickly at the start. That breakdown is both, there's 331 of our public space surveillance cameras. So they're the ones on the streets and the places you'd like to, the main nodal areas, our transport routes, etc. You'd like to pick up cameras. The 140 cameras that will increase to 200 cameras is specifically around our parking enforcement colleagues. So they own that camera network. They essentially decide where they place that. We share a CCTV room with them, and their officers are in with ourselves. We all share the same monitors, but they are increasing their cameras specifically around parking enforcement. So that will be done on a matrix of where, you know, depending, I suppose, where we're changing our highways, where our regeneration is happening. I don't have the specific locations for those, Councillor, but I can either go back with the question or ask someone in highways to contact you on that. They're specifically highways cameras that increase.
Thank you very much. Councillor Guana, are you happy with the answer?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Fantastic. Councillor Garfield.
Thank you, Chair. I had a question regarding security, mentioned briefly in section 6. And sort of it segues also from section 4, because I know that we're switching over from the analog system to a digitized one. Many of you, if not all of you, I imagine, will be aware of the cyber attack on a neighbour of ours, a neighbouring local authority, just at the tail end of last year. And I wondered, with the transfer to facilities management and moving over to digital, our officers and Councillor Beckles, who I can't see anymore, I think he's just off my screen, but are officers satisfied that the sufficient security measures are in place with, with regards to encryption and ensuring that everybody's data, as is recorded by CCTV across the borough, is kept, whether it be in a cloud-based system or server-based system, in as secure manner as possible?
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, if I don't cover the specifics of the detail of the tech, I'll absolutely happily come back to you, because I will have colleagues that might be able to give me more on that. I guess, we've moved over to IP. I know that I've talked in the reports about we've got 63 cameras that are still coming across to IP, but the majority of our network is on IP. It's an IP system. That's happened since 2018 going forward. That has been done in conjunction with our internal IT service. So it's on a server IT service, which to me was very unusual. I've never seen that. I've normally seen external services. So I would certainly like to think that that's a safer, more secure service. It's not hosted offline. That is admittedly the one downside or con to that is, if something was to corrupt our IT service, that would maybe affect our cameras. So there's always a sort of a bonus to being on a separate system. On that side, yes, the security of the data, I believe, is fine, and the encryption is good, and in the service we have. I guess where I've probably confused matters slightly, and I apologize because I've been brief in the report, the security I talk about in there is we were also, along with the out of hours call service, we also seemed to, in the CCTV service, also manage the wider contract for security for the council for some reason. And I mean for some reason because I'm struggling to find some of the background to it, but that's been changed since I arrived as well, just as I arrived. So we've lost that side of it, but what we do retain is a smaller security element that actually looks at security of our building, security of the depot itself, because we retain that because we're right there and we've got the cameras on the depot. So we retain that element, but they also link up with we've got a key handling service. So if we need an emergency key for any of our buildings late at night, that security team deal with that. So they sort of double up as our security for the building. That's nothing to do with our intelligence or our data or anything. So it's a slightly separate thing. So apologies that was confusing.
Thank you very much. Councillor Garford, do you have a supplementary?
No, that pretty much covers it. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Gary.
No worries. Councillor Tuhura?
Oh yeah, thank you, Daniel. My question is a very simple one. Just about the maintenance of the cameras. How do we ensure that all the cameras are in good working conditions, so we don't miss out of vital information, on crimes that take place in the street?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Simple but very good question, if I'm honest. It's a matter that we do pick up. We will always have issues with cameras, and you'll always come to the lifespan of a camera. Cameras will often last no more than sort of 15 years or so, and you look to replace them. So we have, so there's a number of ways, I guess, to answer your question. One, all of our cameras, whilst we have a monitoring system where you can only watch so many cameras at once, you can't watch sort of 500 cameras at one time. Our cameras will be on a rotation. We'll often watch the town centre ones more, but we'll always flick through the other cameras. So you will see it when they come up, and there is a whole system as well. It's not just human error or human interaction. There is a system that will obviously show on our servers if a camera goes down, or if we lose something in the back room. Now we've got an officer. I mentioned at the start to Councillor Masters' question. We've got an officer that's effectively our technical officer in the office, and he's our main link to our contractor. We've got a contractor that looks after the cameras externally, but they also look after some of our control room works. So they are contracted essentially to fix our equipment, along with our IT central service that will fix any of the data issues that we have. So essentially, but we will fix on that basis. But also just to point out as well, we maintain a cache of spares. We've got a number of cameras, close to 100 cameras, that will replace a number of our cameras on the street, both static and what we call pan-tilt zooms, that are movable cameras for town centres. So we've got a good stock there. But it's a good question, because any CCTV system will only have a lifespan of 10 to 15 years.
Wow, that's a
Thank you very
lot.
much. Councillor
I
Tuhura,
didn't imagine that.
Sorry, go ahead, Councillor Tuhura.
Oh, no. I was just saying that 15 years, this is something I had never imagined, for a camera to stay up there for up to 15 years.
And if I can come back to that, Councillor.
Mm-hmm,
Apologies, Councillor. Didn't mean
yeah.
to butt in. If I can come back on that, I don't mean to be dramatic. We'll always change cameras as we go. If you didn't change any of them, we'd have to change it all. We're constantly changing cameras as they come to a lifespan.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Councillor Tahora, did you have a supplementary question, or are you happy with that?
No, maybe how long does it take if you notice that one camera is broken today? How long does it take to change it? Is it straight away, the same day? Does it take a week? Just
I apologize profusely. I don't have it in front of me, but that is part of our contract. If we have generally it will be, it should be within the 5 working days, but I'll check on that. There's different levels of different priority cameras, but I can get that for you supplementary if you need it.
Yeah,
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Grant, I see you. I'm going to come to you in a minute. I've just got a quick question that I would like to ask of Chris Nixon. Being a local councillor, one of the things that you often hear from residents is we want a CCTV camera. If there is a spate of burglaries or there are cars that are vandalised, whatever it seems to be that CCTV cameras are the answer to all. And my question to you is, as a professional police officer, what is the actual efficacy of CCTV cameras in preventing crime? Because I'm pretty sure you can give us a bit more of a background on that, because it just seems from a layman's perspective that it seems that they solve everything, almost do away with the police and stick a camera up there. Thank you.
Yeah, they certainly don't solve everything, but in terms of policing and crime reduction interventions that we have evidence for, they are one of the ones with a better evidence base. I recommend to any of you to have a look at the College of Policing What Works database. It's whilst the next people are talking, I'll find a link and post it in the chat. But it's public facing, and it goes to a whole range of policing interventions and which ones have stronger or weaker evidence. CCTV is one of the things with stronger evidence, but it is a very expensive intervention, whereas there are some cheaper things that can have similar effect and have good evidence bases, such as the sort of partnership problem solving and hotspot targeted operations that we do as well. And I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you very much. No, that was great. Gary, did you want to come in on that?
Yeah, Councillor, I'm not talking for this borough, but in a previous role, having managed the CCTV service for 10 plus years, I've had to write papers in times of austerity where I've been asked exactly this question by members, and having tried, and a bit like Chris has said, having tried to look at national data, local data, talk to other councils across the country, it's always been very hard. And I anticipated potentially a question tonight on the efficiency and what do we solve crime with CCTV. It is incredibly hard to prove it, incredibly hard.
Thank you. I really do appreciate that. I just have a bit of a supplementary because to me, the numbers seem quite healthy in terms of the number of cameras we've got. I did try and find some comparisons with our near neighbours. It's a bit sketchy. The years don't necessarily line up. But to be honest with you, our numbers are pretty high compared to some of our neighbours. And especially as you move out towards Redbridge and Havering, we are quite high compared to them. But one of the things I wanted to ask Chris once again, and I do apologise, Chris, I'm not picking on you, is that it seems to me that the council shoulders the burden in terms of the financial cost of the cameras, but in turn we help the police to do your role more effectively, and I would hope in the long term reduce crime in Newham. Do you contribute in any way towards the upkeep, the maintenance, the manpower, any of it that's needed to operate this camera network, seeing as you do obviously benefit from it, and one would assume that through increased sanction detection rates, etc., it would make the police service look good in Newham?
We don't contribute to the upkeep of your cameras. I'd suggest the main thing that we bring to your CCTV network is having a camera network and no one responding to it or doing the second step would be the real benefit we bring. We do monitor the few feeds that we've got, but no, we do not contribute financially to your CCTV network as far as I'm aware. I'm sure Gary can correct me on that.
I think from the smile on Gary's face, I think he knew the answer before I even asked it, to be honest with you.
Yes, sure.
But Gary, do you have anything you would like to add on that point?
No, apart from the fact I really appreciate the question, Chair. And I think, Chris and I have spoken. I mean, I've spoken to Chris' counterparts in a number of places I've worked. It is difficult. And at one point, and Chris, whether Chris has had this in his career or not, at one point, most CCTV control rooms were actually based in police stations, but run by council officers. So again, slightly strange. So we were always given the rent free in a sense. But that seems to have changed in most boroughs. No, I think it is difficult. And I've raised, and your counterparts in other boroughs have raised that with me as well, Chair, to raise with police colleagues. It is difficult. It's an expensive service. Police obviously do get a benefit. We all get a benefit because it helps reduce crime. But I guess I'm not surprised in Newham the police don't contribute. It's not different anywhere else.
Thank you very much. I do have further supplementary questions, but I'm going to give others a chance. Councillor Guana, I saw you. Does any other member wish to ask a question? Councillor Masters, anybody else? No? Okay, Councillor Guana.
Oh, okay. Because we have a big population in Newham. What will be the ideal number of cameras for our borough, do you think we should need?
Incredibly good question, an incredibly difficult answer. I think it's based on often the makeup of your borough. We will have, and Chris Nixon will know this, excuse me, Councillor, we would have far more, I guess it depends on so when we start to bring our housing cameras on board, we will start to really boost. There you're talking about 700 odd cameras there. We'll start to have more security around our housing network essentially, and bring those more on board with live feed. The point I was going to say about why it's a difficult to answer is it depends on your town centres and the makeup of your borough. Again, I came from a previous borough, which I won't mention, which had a relatively similar population, but it had basically 3 towns all in a T. And so our cameras were all based on those essentially, whereas in Newham it's slightly different. But your cameras are generally concentrated in your town centres, and they sort of span out from there. So you have major concentrations, and then we come out some of the main link roads, nodal roads, and you've got far less cameras, public-facing cameras I'm talking about, on your estates and roads and streets, because essentially we don't want cameras on our streets looking at our houses. So you're generally on main roads. So I apologise, it's a poor answer, but
Sorry, is that...
It generally does depend.
Oh, sorry, Gary, 1 second. Sorry, you froze. I'm not sure. Was it just my screen that froze, or was it everybody's?
No,
Everyone's, Chairs.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Garfield. Gary, do you just want to rewind a little bit, because we lost you for a little bit there? Sorry. I think you said you were basically at the point where you said this may be a poor answer. Sorry. I don't know.
Yeah, it may be difficult to answer. Sorry, and if I was going to say if I freeze again, wave, but no one will probably see me. Apologies about that. My coverage is fine here, it seems. But yeah, so essentially what I was saying, Councillor, if you didn't miss any of the answer to your question, was essentially it's not so much the makeup and the population of the borough. It's where people congregate. It's where crimes happen. It's the main nodal points. They are focused on our town centres, and they work out from that, and they cover main arterial routes, bus routes, near train stations, etc. And any big, we will look for what we call Section 106 or SIL money, which you'll be aware of, around new developments, and we will put cameras where we can. So essentially, I'd like to expand cameras as much as we can, but we try to avoid, in my experience in my career, try to avoid putting them up and down everybody's street, because that's not what everybody wants. So essentially, a difficult question to answer, because we wouldn't just put them everywhere, I think, and it's not based on population.
Thank you very much. Do you have a supplementary question, Councillor?
But do you think this will be half 600? I lost the number, plus the 200 will be enough cameras for the borough? Will be enough, or through the year, do you think will be add more cameras?
I think, and just to point out again, if I'm not really sorry if I've confused people with the numbers, there's essentially 331 main public space surveillance cameras. We have a number of parking cameras, so which is the other amount, and we've got some on our buildings. So the 331 across the borough. I think from having looked at the network, and I apologise I didn't supply you with a map of where they are, and I can send something around to colleagues and to members. Again, as I said in my previous answer, I think we cover a lot of our town centres very well. we link up with, and I know one of the questions on the rationale for this question was linking up with other areas. So we would have Stratford Mall will have a CCTV system really well. It's a really good system in the mall, actually. Westfield will have a private system we can link into. We don't take their footage, but we know they have it. So as long as we can also map across other areas and cover the borough as best we can. I think it's a difficult question, Councillor. I would like to have, obviously, full view of every street because it would make people hopefully feel a bit safer. I also think we intrude on people's lives and become a slightly Big Brother state if we have cameras on every road.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that comprehensive answer. That's greatly appreciated. Councillor Masters, I see you, Councillor Tuhura. Councillor Masters, sorry.
Hi. I just wanted to go back to the question Daniel was asking, because he brought up the subject of money. Now, obviously, there are two reasons why you have cameras, and that's been touched on throughout this session, that they are there to keep our residents safe, but also there to sort of generate revenue. Although, you know, that's also sort of ensuring that people, that drivers sort of operate within the rules. Do you feel that there is a pressure to focus more on the revenue generating side? And I say that in a way that's not intended as a criticism, because obviously as a local authority we're under pressure, and you know, traffic violations of themselves are a problem too. But do you feel that there's a shift in focus and an interest in sort of generating revenue is perhaps taking away from the original need of cameras to sort of actually keep our residents safe? Do we need to review that?
I think not, Councillor, because I don't manage the highway enforcement service. So whilst we share the room and we have a camera network, I'm focused purely on the public space surveillance cameras and our I guess our camera network across our councils, and hopefully now shortly our housing cameras, purely around the safety, crime capture, reduction and reassurance side of it. I appreciate the expansion. I know there are colleagues in highway enforcement, and apologies I didn't bring someone from highways tonight. I appreciate that. I guess from the highway side, yes, they are looking to expand their cameras. I know the premise is obviously around about safer streets and keeping our streets safe. We talked lots, you know, in my first couple of months about the amount of strange kind of joyriding and hot rod issues around the Beckton area. So yeah. I know that there's focus. The focus is on that, but there will obviously absolutely be income generation expected from that to reduce. But ultimately the aim there, certainly across our directorate, is to increase safety and reduce crime.
So you feel we've got the balance right?
Oh, I certainly think so. And if I'm honest, and if I haven't explained it correctly, I think my sole aim, whilst I have officers from parking enforcement use it was originally our control room instead of parking and come in, whilst we share an office in there and our officers work together, they will focus very much on parking enforcement and don't get involved in the public surveillance cameras, and vice versa. My focus in my area and my team is purely around the public protection side.
And if I may, Susan, I think your question, as much as you said you don't want to offend, but I think you're alluding to more of a political discussion here. And if you're asserting that somehow the council or my service or parking or whether it's highways would put profit over people's safety, then can you clarify that for me, please? Is that what you're alluding to by your question?
No, I'm literally just asking whether there are
because
pressures.
I can, well, not to go into different cases, but of course there may be pressures, but if you're asserting or through your question alluding to the fact that James. You're asking, okay, I was just clarifying that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Beckles. Thank you, Councillor Masters. Councillor Masters, are you satisfied with that answer?
I hope so. I mean, I just want to clarify, this is a scrutiny session, you know, we do ask questions, and you know, I feel that was a reasonable question.
That's
and
right.
Perfectly reasonable, but as the cabinet lead, I will assert my right to come back on questions where I feel you're making assertions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Beckles. Thank you, Councillor Masters. Greatly appreciate both of your inputs. Councillor Bailey, I see you. I also see Councillor Tuhura before, so I'm going to go to Councillor Tuhura.
Yes, let me see. I can't see you. I just wanted to know if there's any statistics around a particular area where crime was reduced due to a camera, probably in Newham. Just something simple. Any
Sorry.
difference? Yeah.
Sorry, Councillor. I think you blipped in the middle there. It might have been my coverage. Were you asking me if we have examples of where crime is reduced because of the cameras?
Yeah. Any statistics in Newham? Just some. Yeah. Where we can see the difference between.
I didn't bring any today. I would have to go back and look for it, and I could look for it for you. And again, without going into case by case, and I know Chris Nixon may well be aware of this, but certainly we have numerous examples of our officers picking up. And when we were instrumental in the arrest of an arsonist just recently in a part of the borough, so we were looking out for him. You know, there's a lot of good examples recently of where we've detected crime and reduced crime, and we're looking to try and promote that better in those areas, back to our members in those areas as well. And I'm working with Councillor Beckles about how we can get that good information out and get it back. To answer your question, there would be when we look to put up, so obviously our main public face cameras in Stratford, etc. If crime came down, you could argue it was cameras there. I would argue it's probably a multitude of problem-solving approaches. But what we can do, and we've put some cameras up recently in relation to an ASB case and some very, very difficult reports we've received, and we've put some cameras up. And I've asked for obviously a time analysis within the next 3 to 6 months about the effect we'll have there. And absolutely, in my experience, and Chris may report as well, in my experience, when you put up temporary cameras in areas, you promote those cameras so that people know that reassurance, but also those doing nefarious deeds will also know they're being watched. You will see a reduction. Whether I don't have any examples with me today, though, Councillor, apologies.
Okay, we just need to know. Yeah, these cameras are really making a difference in certain areas. Yeah.
Councillor, not for examples in Newham, but if you follow the link to that What Works database, there were several meta-analyses of use of cameras where they were, I believe some of them were using random controls. So that'd have probably more robust evidence than our anecdotes would. I hope that'd be useful.
Yeah, because we were talking about Newham and we have specific crime hotspots. That's why I asked that question. Yeah.
No, I mean, if you wanted to say Stratford, for example, I'm looking at Stratford's figures. We're down 30% on total notifiable offences, comparing the 12 weeks that just ended with the previous 12 months ago. Now, some of that will be CCTV, but it's a whole host of interventions, which is hard to separate out which one's done the good.
Thank you very much.
All right. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Greatly appreciate that. One of the things I wanted to touch on, and I will go to Councillor Bailey after this, was in regards to money. We spoke about money, and I broached the subject. But in terms of the parking cameras, you said there are different directorate. You said I think there were different officers. Is that correct, Gary?
Yeah, same directorate, Chair. They're all within my director, but they're a different team.
But there's like a demarcation. So the question I want to ask is, they're looking at a camera, or the camera is automatically, let's take Browning Road Bridge, for example. I don't quite know how the system works, but I do know that it's very lucrative. That's one thing I know for sure. So the question I would ask is, someone's monitoring Browning Road Bridge. Are they also looking out for crimes? Or is it an automatic system? Can you just talk us through that, how it works? Because I think some of the figures here, and I don't want to be disingenuous, so I will say this is obviously as well to do with traffic wardens going around. But between August 2019 and July 2020, the London Borough of Newham was found to have pocketed the most significant revenues, taking 10.6 million from 239,000 tickets issued. But most notably, Browning Road was named the location where the local authority issued the most tickets. Now, I don't know the exact figure, but we do know that Browning Road is CCTV. That's not a traffic warden manually slapping tickets on somebody. So we do know that the cameras are used quite extensively for that. And I just want to get an understanding as to how that benefits us in terms of crime reduction as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Good question. And again, probably explains my lack of detail in the report. The parking enforcement cameras are specifically for parking enforcement. They are not being used for something else. And similarly, our public surveillance cameras are not being used for parking cameras. So the demarcation is in those 140, soon to be 200 cameras will be placed in areas specifically for parking enforcement. We share it. We share the system when they share in the network, but they use their cameras specifically for parking enforcement.
Thank you. But then what, sorry, and I will come to Councillor Bailey after this. I do apologise, Councillor Bailey. Please do allow me the latitude. But earlier on, you did speak about the increase in the number of cameras being about community safety. Now, if those cameras are specifically for parking, how are they going to increase community safety in the expansion that we're talking about when you talk about the addition going up to 200, I do believe it is? How is that going to increase community safety? Now, obviously, in terms of hot rodding and cars screeching around, absolutely, but that's to do with, you know, fining people. We're generally talking about ASB, you know, people up to no good. Those cameras wouldn't necessarily, they're not going to be used for that. They're more for fine and revenue generation. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely correct, Chair. And apologies if I've given that misguidance. And genuinely apologies. I guess what I was talking to when I was talking generally earlier is we've got the 331 cameras we have here, increase on cameras around our council buildings, increase of the housing cameras coming on. All of that is in essentially that crime reduction network. There is an element, as you've just said, about watching for speeding, hot rodding, etc. on the parking enforcement cameras, but they are around parking enforcement, highway enforcement.
I appreciate that. The one thing I would like to say on that matter is, though, is that the new cameras coming on for parking enforcement, they are new cameras. The cameras you've spoken about that are around council buildings, that are on housing estates, these are all existing infrastructure. How much are we actually developing into new cameras coming online for community safety, as opposed to new cameras coming online for revenue generation?
So essentially, and I've covered it only briefly, I think, in the end of the paper, and I appreciate that. Apologies, it's not in great detail. We have a number of schemes. I don't have the numbers of cameras on here, and I can come back with this, Chair. We are putting new cameras into, for example, West Ham Cemetery. At the moment, we have a limited capital budget essentially within my service of although substantial but limited in terms of the infrastructure we're talking about, of 850,000, and we've already got earmarked I think with 200,000 of that to complete works around West Ham Cemetery, to put cameras in there and increase the security and safety there. And I've got 300,000 of it earmarked to do the final upgrades of our cameras to IP right across the network. We do have the money that comes out of that, so we'll have about 350 left out of that and within that budget, 350,000, sorry, and that will go towards working to do, alongside the housing internal cameras, we do have some external housing cameras around the borough as well to sit on the outside of estates, and we will be utilising the rest of the money to do that. Outside of that, Chair and Commission, there is no budget unless we work closely with our colleagues in Highways Regeneration, 106 SIL money. There is no budget to expand the cameras beyond what we have.
No, I appreciate that. And I just feel as though community safety is important. As Councillor Beckles, you know, vociferously, wanted to point out a moment ago, that there is no community safety at the expense of fines, etc. But it does seem to be, and I totally get it. Look, these cameras, like the Browning Road one, are generating an income. They're working a job, right? They are generating revenue. The other cameras are not so. They're the poorer relation. And so I understand why anybody would want to seek to put more revenue generating cameras up and maybe not be so keen to put up the community safety camera. I totally get it. Like, it makes absolute sense. But obviously, as a councillor, a local councillor, for me, I would want it to be the other way around, if that makes sense. To be honest, I would prefer that we focus more on the community safety. In terms of actually revenue generation, what plans do you have to try and make CCTV in the borough somehow either self-sustaining or profitable?
There are, and again, apologies, Councillor, and I haven't prepared an answer to this question. Essentially, going to IP and going to digital, there are opportunities to use our network. So again, I've mentioned in the paper, going to IP with the cameras we have at the moment, we use about 20% of our capacity. So we can easily take on housing, but we could take on other areas around CCTV. But not only CCTV, we could potentially look at, for example, air pollution monitoring, things like that. We could look to ways to utilize our CCTV network, the actual network itself, in different ways. But I can come back. I don't have any set generation. I guess what I would look to do and what I would utilize is, as we have more and more expansion into regeneration, housing, any changes in the borough, any upgrades around infrastructure in the borough, we would look, and particularly around our network and Crossrail. We're in discussions with colleagues around Crossrail stations as well, to try and utilise those areas to try and expand our camera network.
Thank you very much. I greatly appreciate that. Councillor Bailey.
Yes, you know, there's an increase. I'm just wondering if Greenway is included in the increase of cameras. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Apologies, I don't have that answer at the moment, specifically on Greenway. I can come back. I am sorry about that.
Okay, Councillor Bailey, do you have a supplementary?
No, thank you, no.
Okay, can I please ask the clerk, Roger, all of these questions that are being asked that we're being told we'll get a response to, can I ask, Gary, how long will it take you to get a response to these questions that you're being asked?
Within the next week, Chair.
Within the next week, so we'll say by next week, Wednesday at the latest, Roger, can I ask that you email the answer to all of these questions that are being asked to all of the commission members, please? Just give me a thumbs up, Roger, just so I know you've heard me. Yeah, okay, fantastic. Thank you very much. Does any other member have a question at this time? Councillor Garfield.
Thank you, Chair. I understand that colleagues from Highways aren't here this evening, nor as the political lead for that department. So we've had quite a few conversations about Highways. I'm aware they're not here to speak for their department, but I wonder if officers could clarify, because we've heard a lot from answers to a couple of questions about the revenue generation of some CCTV cameras in the borough, and I'd like some clarity around what it is what it really means for us as a borough and as a community in terms of community safety when these cameras are installed. Because while they may be revenue generating, surely if officers can clarify, and so can the cabinet lead, surely the purpose of these cameras is to reduce dangerous driving or driving illegality in those neighbourhoods. And so in turn, they very much are serving the job and the role of community safety, more so and more importantly than any revenue they may generate for the council.
Yes, Councillor.
Just 1 second,
Sorry.
Harry. Can I just add a point in there as well, just so you can answer two in one? Thank you, Councillor Garfield, for your question. I really do appreciate it. But I just want to throw something else in there that can get answered at the same time. Just take, for example, Browning Road. That is a road that was closed off by the council. And that's what that checks. So it doesn't check for people speeding or for people driving on the pavement or any of those things. It checks if someone drives down a road that once was open. So just so that we can get that in there just for a bit of balance. Thank you, Gary.
May I clarify that point a little further though, please, Chair? Because surely thank you, Chair. Surely if Highways see fit to close a road and a road is closed and drivers drive through it, that is an act of dangerous driving if one is to drive through a closed road.
Absolutely, and I totally agree with you. And I don't think I want to get into the semantics, but prior to that road being closed, it wasn't illegal to drive down it. So the camera wasn't necessary for illegality, if you see what I mean. So, I mean, we're splitting hairs here, but let's let Gary answer. We can talk about this after. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Garfield. I guess in one way, and just to clarify a couple of points that have been raised, certainly apologies to me. I've not invited my Highways colleagues to be here tonight, so nobody has declined to come. I've tried to pull together a paper to give us an overview of CCTV in the borough, and apologies if I've conflated two together there. I guess the one thing I would say, Councillor Garfield, I agree with you in a sense. Whilst I am very clear that my Highways colleagues man and run our parking enforcement cameras and highways enforcement cameras, there is absolutely no way that they're not. You're not going to avoid if you pick up a crime or if you see crime ASB. We're all in the same room. We can link up. There's absolutely the primary focus is whilst there is income generation clearly there, it is to we would obviously like there to be no speeding, no violations at all, and we would be a safer borough, I guess. So that is obviously the primary function, I guess. There, and as the chair has mentioned, our cameras across the crime world are not there for income generation. It's there around safety. But in a sense, our whole network, and I would certainly welcome and value our colleagues in parking enforcement putting in as many cameras as we could, properly, legally, morally, rightly, because again, I've got better coverage because it does again increase our reassurance for our residents.
Thank you.
Councillor Garfield, do you have supplementary?
No, I'm all right with that, Chair. Thank you.
Sure, no worries. Thank you very much. Gary, one question I just wanted to ask you. You said about the cameras reducing speeding. Can you just explain what type of cameras we're talking about here? Because how do they reduce speeding? Or can you just explain that, please? Thanks.
Yeah, apologies, Chair. And again, if I'm not talking from an area of expertise on this, in the point that if you are caught speeding in the area and you catch enough people in the area, they will know they're not going to speed down that road again, is where I was coming from. Apologies.
No, my question is, do these cameras monitor speed? That's what I'm asking. You said they will deter people from speeding. That's why I'm asking, are they speed cameras? Do they stop people? Do you see where I'm going with this? As opposed to, obviously, if a camera, catches somebody going through a road they shouldn't be going through, I get that. That's the cameras I thought we were talking about, just your normal CCTV cameras, as opposed to speed cameras. And if they are normal cameras, what I was asking is, how do they actually capture the speed or stop people from speeding? That's where my question was going.
I got it totally, Chair. Yeah, apologies. I don't know the answer to that, Chair. I will add it to the answers. I imagine there are not speedometer cameras. No, I imagine it's not.
I didn't think so. It's just because you said they deter people from speeding. Chris?
I can answer to that on only very specific things where Gary and I are working together. So, for example, you have your car meets and similar, like people racing where it's an antisocial behaviour problem. The cameras would help us there deter speeding, because the council will share video footage of people speeding or driving antisocially. We get that and we can issue a warning under the Police Reform Act on the vehicle, and then that gives us the power to seize it if it speeds again. I'm very keen, and I know Gary is, to extend our work in this area, but it's something where there's a lot of volume and probably, well, I think there are wins to be had, but we haven't identified them yet.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate that. And I just wanted to make sure that there was a clear distinction that these cameras were not catching people doing 21 in a 20. They are clearly catching people doing dangerous acts such as donuts or whatever else they're seeking to do. And of course, that absolutely makes sense. Councillor Gray, you haven't had a chance to have any input. Was there anything that you wanted to ask Councillor Gray at this time?
No, apologies, Chair. I've had other meetings I have to go to, so I've joined late. So I don't ask a question that you've already covered. It's my fault for being late, but all good stuff. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you very much, Councillor Gray. No, I just wanted to kind of shoehorn you in there and give you the opportunity to ask a question. Does any member have any questions that they'd like to ask at this time? Okay, with that in mind then, I would like to thank our witnesses for attending. Councillor Beckles, thank you very much for coming. Really appreciate it. Gary, thank you as always for coming. And Chris, we really do appreciate it. Thank you very much for coming. Moving on to our next agenda item number 6. This is for the Commission to note the review and agree the serious youth violence and its effects on young women in the borough report and recommendations presented. Has every member had a chance to read the report? Just give me a thumbs up if you have.
Not just a little bit.
Yeah, okay, fantastic. The Commission will need to agree the report before it can be presented to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. So I'm going to move it now. So I move that the committee agree the serious youth violence and its effects on young women in the borough review report and recommendations. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Garfield. Appreciate that. Are the report and recommendations agreed? Agreed. Perfect. Thank you very much. Agenda item number 7, the work programme. Would any member like to make suggestions for items that could be considered for next year's work programme at this time? No, you don't have to. It's okay. We don't have anything. No, that's fine. Scrutiny officers will discuss the options anyway for next year's work programme, and other council officers to plan the Commission's work for the next municipal year. Agenda item number 8, the date of our next meeting. This will sadly be our last Commission meeting for the municipal year. It's been an absolute honour and privilege to chair for this year, and I just want to say a massive thank you to everybody who's played a part, whether it be officers, whether it be lead members. Councillor Beckles, it's been a pleasure to work alongside you, and also to the members of the Commission. Thank you very much for all that you've done. And that brings to an end our meeting. I officially close the meeting at 7:57. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
God bless you.